elbow freeze can be done at a beginner's level, but it can also be done at a more advanced level. There's enough elbow freeze for everyone, guys, and that's what we're gonna cover in this video. Now, there are many different kinds of elbow freezes, and most of them are based off of handstand. So if you don't know how to do a handstand, then you're gonna have a lot of issues trying to learn the elbow freezes that I cover in this video. So that's the first step. Make sure you know how to do a little bit of a handstand, and preferably knowing how to walk around in your handstand. If you're still learning handstands and you need tips on your handstand, then check out my video on handstand that you can find alongside many other videos on my YouTube channel. So you know how to do a handstand. Great. Let's get working on that elbow freeze. So start out on your knees and place your elbow on the floor. Now avoid placing your fist on the floor and replace it by putting your hand flat on the floor. Putting your hand flat on the floor when you're learning the elbow freeze is going to give you a lot more grip and make you feel a lot more stable in that elbow freeze. Kind of relating it a little bit to the handstand. Also, for the basic elbow freeze, you want to keep in mind that it's okay to place your other hand on the floor. That hand is going to be used for support to help you maintain control and balance during your elbow freeze. Now, before you learn any type of elbow freeze, listen to this important golden rule right here that is given to you by somebody who's been teaching and coaching for over 20 years now, is make sure you learn your elbow freeze on both sides. And this rule basically goes for any freeze. Every freeze you learn as a beginner must be learned on both sides. Why? Because it's going to give you major advantage in the future, and also because you just want to trust your online b-boy coach. Now, with your hands in position, let's lift up one leg while the other is used to push ourselves up. You basically want to just push yourself up and let yourself drop back down, and do this multiple times until you start to build a little bit of trust with your elbow freeze. It's important to have a good relationship with your elbow freeze. Also, a really smart thing for you to do is learn how to roll out of your elbow freeze. Because if you might overshoot, then you can simply roll out of that elbow freeze without hurting yourself, which is a lot more enjoyable. Reminder that you want to do this on both sides, so you feel equally comfortable on both sides. Now, when you start to find a little bit of balance, it will kind of remind you of the feeling of a handstand. Now, the shape or form that I recommend you to try and learn first is the basic pump position, with your legs bent and your knees close to your stomach. This is basically the position used whenever you hop in certain positions. However, I don't recommend you guys to hop just yet. Once balance starts to develop, you can start playing around with multiple forms and shapes. As demonstrated by Petito right here in the video, the better your balance is, the more freedom you develop to try and apply different shapes and forms. Keeping in mind that you can play around with that supporting hand. All you need is a little creativity, because in this b-boy and b-girl game, there are no limits. Again, a friendly reminder that you want to do all of this on both sides. Now, when you know how to do an elbow freeze and you have a couple of forms and shapes that you can use, the next thing you want to do is start to combine it with other moves. Now, there are many different ways to combine moves together, and to be pretty precise, there are infinite ways to actually combine your moves together. However, a really good tip I can share with you guys when combining the elbow freeze is make sure your execution is quick and sharp. Avoid putting everything into position before executing the elbow freeze itself, because then you're making your elbow freeze very, very predictable and, quite frankly, a little boring. So try executing that elbow freeze straight out of a handstand while very quickly dropping from those hands down to your elbow. The impact of the freeze is going to be a lot stronger, and especially if you execute it well to the music. By the way, if you need more help with beginner moves, and obviously I have tons of videos on my YouTube channel, but better than that, if you want the real deal, then definitely check out my beginner's masterclass that you can find on my website. Basically, everything you need to know as a b-boy or b-girl beginner is shared in this masterclass. You can find the link to my website in the description down below. Now let's move on to a more advanced elbow freeze, which is the elbow freeze without using that support hand. Now, I recommend you trying this first on your hands, especially when looking for different shapes and forms with your legs. Once you get a little familiar with the feeling of doing it on your hands, then you simply want to try it exactly the same way on your elbow. It might feel a little different because your arm is basically cut in half. However, you do get decent control and decent balance if you keep your hand flat on the floor. Also, something that we notice is that we have one arm free at this point. So when you have one arm free, use it to contribute to the overall form and picture of your freeze.
And again, a very, very friendly reminder to do this on both sides.
Now, if you know how to do the basic elbow freeze on two hands and a decent elbow freeze without using your support hand, then it's time to learn the elbow pike. Now, for the elbow pike, let's start on our knees. Place your elbow on the floor and then rotate until your chest starts to face upwards, with your arm and elbow kind of behind you. Now, with your upper body and arm already in the right place for this elbow pike, the next step is pushing yourself up very gently to try and levitate those hips. Now, this can be pretty challenging, so you want to give yourself some time and you don't want to push yourself up too aggressively to avoid falling and getting injured. Now, to get that really clean and good looking picture within your elbow pike, you want to lift your hips halfway up, but then fold in those legs and keep them stretched while bringing them towards your face. At this point, I do want to remind you guys that we do have one hand free, so you could do different things with it. For example, tap your foot or grab your head or place it behind your back or whatever. Now, to accomplish this, you do need a little bit of flexibility within your hips. So make sure you stretch now and then, especially after practice, because the more flexible you are in breaking, the more different types of shapes and forms and moves you will be able to execute. Now, if you execute this correctly, the legs fold in, building up energy that you can then send back out and basically make you bounce so you can shoot forwards and land back on those feet. Now, it will probably take a few tries and a few fails for you to get to the point where you're actually able to execute this. But keep in mind, it all comes down to a good technique within the hips. Folding your hips and bringing your legs in and then building up that momentum to shoot the legs back out. Keeping in mind that this won't work if you hold the freeze too long. It's just a fraction of a second for you to hit that note on the music and then get out of that freeze as clean as you can. Talking about how to get out of your freeze, it's very important to have smooth and fresh ways to get into your freeze. So if this technique starts to work for you, then try executing it from a makaku, dropping from your hand down to your elbow, but then softening the blow by bringing those hips back in and then shooting them back out as previously shown in the video to make that elbow pike look super clean and super fresh. Make sure you build up to this point. Don't be looking at the most difficult variation in this video. Petito makes it look very, very easy, but trust me, if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna hurt your shoulder straight away, and in the worst case, you might just fall backwards and fall on your head or something like that. So make sure you build up to this point by using all the steps shown in my elbow freeze tutorial. Because at the end of the day, when you think about it, it's just all about that b-boy. Peace.